These videos are about enlightenment practice. And enlightenment practice is about establishing ourselves once again in our own awareness, rather than in what we are aware of. What we're usually aware of is everything that's going on, as well as our own thoughts and our own moods. It might seem a questionable possibility that it's actually possible to step back from all this, to step back from the world, the universe even, as well as step back from our own minds and our own moods, our own emotions and feelings. But this is something you have to find out for yourself. This is enlightenment, sometimes described as nirvana. Back in verse 364 was the description of this nirvana. It was described as when a man sees the rise of all things. The rise of all things is everything that's going on that I've just described. And to be able to actually see all that rather than be caught up in it, you have to step back from it. You have to observe it. You have to become a witness. And this realization of nirvana was contrasted with what's called the nirvana of the philosophers. And the nirvana of the philosophers is what you get when you read about nirvana. And the nirvana that you read about isn't a particularly enticing prospect. It's about some kind of annihilation, some kind of personal annihilation. You're blown out. You don't get reborn anymore. That might be quite a nice prospect. It's what a lot of Indian philosophy is about stopping being reborn. No more lives. Not even a divine life, a heavenly life. So it doesn't seem very appealing what it is that you're actually stepping back to. This point of observation seems quite remote and bleak, perhaps. This awareness that I'm talking about perhaps seems somewhat rarefied, somewhat remote, cold. So in these videos on enlightenment practice, not just in this series but in the other series as well, on Yoga Vasishtha especially, I've emphasized the need to appreciate this awareness. Now you might not need to appreciate it, perhaps you've realized how wonderful it is for yourself. But if you've got a psychology which is a bit like mine and tends to look on the rather bleak side of things, then you do have to do a bit of work at appreciating it. You have to get over this tendency to look at the bleak side of things. It's what I sometimes refer to as my fundamental tone. You might have a similar one. If not, that's great. But if so, we need to work on appreciation. And in the previous video I talked about stepping back. Not in a sense of dislocating yourself, but you step back from everything by embracing it. This sounds like a strange contradiction, but this is the way to do it. This embracing is very much in the sense of love or in the spirit of love. It can't be any other way. And if you realize this, then this rather bleak fundamental tone starts melting. I've got a little bit more to say about this, but let's get on with the next verse. And we'll see if we can incorporate this into verse 368. Mind is of mind only. No mind is also born of mind. When understood, varieties of forms and appearances are of mind only. So again, we have another description of enlightenment practice. Mind is of mind only. So here we're starting with the objects of the mind. We observe that. We observe our own mind, and in that observation, we come back to mind only. Mind with a capital M. Mind only is the awareness that is aware of everything. What an amazing awareness this is, isn't it? There's an infinite variety of things that we can be aware of. Here, although in the English translation it begins with a capital M, that first mind is the small mind. The small mind is of mind only. So whenever we're caught up in a daydream, we're caught up in a fervent belief, or we're caught up in a mood, this is an opportunity to come back to mind only. Come back to that which is aware of it. And this is no mind. So what's described here is no mind, which is obviously mind only. And when this is understood, we apply this to everything that's going on, all forms and appearances, whether mental or so-called physical. When understood, varieties of forms and appearances are of mind only. When we practice this, we come back to what's called the samadhi, which is Maya-like. It's described in the next couple of verses. But basically, we take as our cue everything that's going on, and we come back to what is aware of what is going on. So this sounds quite psychological, but let's get back to what I was saying about appreciating this. I've mentioned it before about the appeal of music, in contrast perhaps say to the appeal of the visual arts. And the contrast is that when you're looking at something, you're going out there, you're looking at an object. There's also the possibility that that object can become an object of desire. But when you listen to music, external objects are less likely to be involved, especially if you're listening on your headphones or earphones. So there's all this stuff going on, but you don't have to feel that you have to go out to it, because it's here. And you can simply enjoy it, appreciate it, without thinking of objects out there. I suppose if it's orchestral music, you might be visualizing the orchestra and seeing the first violins and the double basses and the woodwind and the brass and all the rest of it, and locating it in space, because The sound engineers are very clever now and very advanced, and they're very good at getting the stereo separation to mirror what it would be like if you were actually there. But let's forget all that. Let's just imagine it's some electronica that we're listening to. So there's no preconceived notions about where it should be coming from. We're just enjoying wherever it's coming from. It might be coming from the left or the right, or warbling between them both. So the point here is, and it's a very important point, I believe, that we're appreciating something without the need to locate it in space as an external object. And this spirit of music appreciation is also the spirit of awareness appreciation. There's a vast symphony going on, a universal symphony. I talk about stepping back from it in enlightenment practice, but we can appreciate it. We can appreciate it. We can appreciate the drama of it without being caught up in it, without externalizing it. We embrace the universal symphony the way we embrace a piece of music when we're listening to it. We're completely open to it. Hopefully we're completely open to it and we're not just judging it all the time. If we're really enjoying this piece of music, we're with it. We are with that music. We are open to it. We are space for it. So this is a spirit of nirvana. It's not a rejection of the world. It's an embracing of the world. So much so that in our sense of being, we become bigger than it. Our sense of being is depleted when we put ourselves emotionally into it, when we believe that there's an external object that is an object of desire, or vice versa, something that we don't want. We start judging, we start perceiving objects, what are called here forms and appearances. I think you can experience this most tellingly when you've been sitting in front of the television for more than you should have been. It might be a really good program that you've been watching, perhaps a really good drama, and you get drawn into it. And that can be quite nice for a bit, but it's quite easy to overdo this. If you're watching a whole evening of entertainment, you're going to feel quite depleted by the end of it. This is your sense of being. It's your sense of being that's depleted. But if we practice enlightenment, if we come back to this awareness that is aware of everything, aware of the mind, the moods, physical, sensual world, then our sense of being is replenished and it becomes big. It becomes bigger than everything that it's aware of. It becomes bigger than the whole universe then. And this bigness is fueled by the love that embraces it all. It embraces everything. This is the spirit of nirvana.